Hello class, welcome to part 2 of the week 1 videos for Math 110. We're starting in section 1.2 on number 109. So it says perform the indicated operation. So we are multiplying decimals here. So remember when parentheses are next to each other like we have, it's multiplication. So I'm going to go ahead and just work through them one at a time. One grouping at a time. Okay, so I'm going to multiply the first two together from moving from left to right. I know that a negative times a positive is going to be a negative. And then after I'm done with that, I'm going to multiply it by 2.7. So we have 4.2 and 1.4. We're multiplying these. You may be using a calculator on this. That's okay. We'll use a calculator on the next one just to show you. So 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 4 is 16. Have our placeholder because we've moved over. So 1 times 2 and 1 times 4. And we add them up. And we get 588. Remember when you're multiplying decimals, count the number of decimal places. So we have 1 and 1, which gives us a total of 2. So remember 1, 2. So this is really negative 5.88. Then we're going to go ahead and now multiply these. Again, a negative times a positive is a negative. And we're going to take 5.88 times 2.7. So I have 7 times 8 is 56. Bring our 5 up. And we have another 56, so plus 5 gives me a 61. 7 times 5 is 35, plus 6 is 41. We have a placeholder. And 2 times 8 is 16. Carry the 1. 2 times 8 is 16. Oh, we forgot to add the 1 there, so let's go back there before we make a mistake. Okay. So we have 2 times 8 is 16. Carry the 1. Okay. 2 times 8 is 16 plus 1 is 17. There we go. Carry the 1. 10 and 11. And then we add straight up and down. So 6, 7, 8, 5, 1. And we go ahead and check and see, do we have decimals? Yes, we have 1, 2, 3 total. So we're going to move that over 3. So our final answer ends up being negative 15.876. And again, hopefully you have a little scientific calculator or something that you can use to assist you on the multiplication, but that's how you would do it by hand. Okay. So let's look at a word problem in section 1.2. So again, if you need to pause me so you have a moment to read the problem and get everything set up, feel free to do so, and then when you're ready, come back. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to read the problem and check it out. So let's go through it. Okay, so it says Andrew owes $382.45 on his Visa account. He returns 2 items. Okay, so we have a bill of $382.45. If I return something, that means that I'm getting credited to my account. So that's going to take away from my balance. So I'm going to take away $25.10 and $34.50. So this is the amount of debt that we have, and when we return things, that reduces our debt. Okay. Then he makes a purchase, so now he's making a purchase, so that's going to add back to his debt. So we have $45, and then he made another purchase of $98.17. So we started with a balance of $382.45. Then we returned some items, which is going to take away from some of the debt. So those are being subtracted. And then the last thing that happened was made some charges, and those are going to add back to our debt. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up a calculator to add and subtract these, and then we'll see what we get. If you want to add and subtract them by hand, remember to line up your decimals with addition and subtraction. Okay, so here's the calculator. This is the web 2.0 calc.com. If you're interested in using this is the free online one. Okay, so I'm going to plug it in how I see it. It's 382.45. That was our original debt. We returned an item for $25.10. And then we returned another item for $34.50. Then we added $45, and we added $98.17. So the nice thing about this calculator is you can see everything that you're typing in. So you can go back and double check it and make sure that everything was typed in correctly. And then we hit equals. And we have $466.02 is still what he owes. So we have $466.02. Okay, that's his balance. All right. Okay, so part B. It says instead of paying off the balance, he makes a payment of $300, and then occurs a finance charge of $24.66. Okay, so we had a balance of $466.02. We're going to make a payment, so this means we're going to subtract off, so minus 300, and then we're going to go ahead and add the 2466. Okay, so let's head over to the calculator again and work these out. So I'm going to clear this one. I could actually probably subtract right from there, but we'll start all over. So let's take $466.02. We're going to subtract 300, and then we're going to add 2466. So he made a payment of $300, but then he had some finances here, so finance charge. Okay. So we have $190.68. So let's go ahead and see where we're at. So this is going to equal $190.68 will be what he's left over with. So we're going through some addition subtraction of an account with the making payments and buying things. Alright, let's move on to section 1.3. We're going to start looking at some exponents. So I had 2 and 1.3 that I wanted to talk about because they look similar, but they do end up being a little bit of a different process. It's number 29 and number 30. So if you look at the left side, we have -5 in parentheses that's being cubed. On the right side, for number 33, we have -3 to the power of 6. So what you want to pay attention to is where the negative sign is. On the left side, we have the -5 in the parentheses. So the cube means we're going to have 3 negative 5's being multiplied together. But what we want to do is we want to keep the negative 5 in parentheses and rewrite it 3 times. Okay, we're doing it 3 times because we have an exponent of 3. Now the difference for the one on the right, we'll come back and multiply that one out. The one on the right, notice that the negative sign is not inside a parentheses. So this really means negative 1 times 3 to the 6th, which gives me negative 1 times 3 6 times. So notice that the negative sign is not in each parentheses. It is put out front. We're still going to multiply it once through, but it's not in every part. So you want to be careful as you start to work these problems. Identify where is the negative sign. Is it in parentheses? The one on the right, we get a positive 25 here times negative 5. And then this gives me negative 125 when we multiply that. On the right, that gives me negative 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, 3, and 3. And then I have 9 times 3 times 3 times 3. And we get 27. And we have 81. I forgot my negative sign. Make sure that's coming along as we go through. And then we multiply this. This gives us negative 243 times 3. And the final one gives us negative 729. The main thing with this is identifying where the negative sign was. When there is parentheses, keep it inside each parenthesis. When there isn't, go ahead and put it out front. Make sure you're paying attention as you work those. Alright, let's look at order of operations. So in 1.3 we look at order of operations. Notice that I've written them out here for you. This is the same thing that's in the book that you can check out. And as we go through, what's interesting about this one is step 1 says work separately above and below any fraction bar. So that's usually not given in your order of operations, but that is something you want to do. You want to treat the numerator as its own problem, and you want to keep the denominator as its own problem, and then at the very end we'll finish it off. So we have the grouping symbols, parentheses, brackets, absolute values. You want to work on the innermost set and then work out. Then we have powers and exponents. Multiplication and division in order from left to right. So division can't come first if it's left of multiplication. And then we have addition and subtraction, again from left to right. And the idea is subtraction can come before addition if it becomes left to right. Okay, so let's see what we have. Looks like there we go. Okay, so let's start with some parentheses. And we identify that inside my parentheses, I can't add anything. But what I can do is the square root of 4. Remember, 4 is 2 times 2. So since we're dealing with a square root, we find that the square root of 4 is 2. And we have negative 5 plus and negative 2 squared over negative 5 minus 1. Okay, so we have an exponent. We have some addition and subtraction. Since these are both in their own little parentheses, they're sort of their own little problem. So I can actually do this addition before I did the exponent, or we can do them on the same step. So negative 5 plus 2 gives me negative 3. Now here's that case where we have negative 1 times 2 squared, which is negative 1 times 2 times 2, which gives me 4 times negative 1 or negative 4. On bottom, again, remember the denominator is its own little problem, so negative 5 minus 1 is negative 6. And we keep going. We still have operation in the numerator. It's multiplication. Negative 3 times negative 4 is 12 divided by negative 6. And that gives me a negative 2. 12 divided by negative 6. So a couple little tricks in that one. Remember in the square root, and then also that negative in front of the 2 squared. That is a common mistake that is made as people work through these, so be careful. Alright, let's look at another one that's similar. So this is evaluating. Now the only thing that's extra with evaluating is we actually have to plug the numbers in first. Then once we get them plugged in, then we're going to go ahead and go through the order of operations. So I have 4 for W. So everywhere there's a W, I'm going to plug in a 4. So this first one's going to be negative, and I'm plugging in the 4. Notice how I use parentheses. Anytime you plug a number in when there's a sign on it or a coefficient, you want to use parentheses. Plus 2 times my x, and my x value is negative 3/4. So I'm plugging in negative 3/4, didn't leave a lot of room there. And we have plus 3 times my y value, which is a 1/2. So we're taking 1/2 and plugging it in. Plus z. And my z value is 1.25. Okay, so now we want to go ahead and start simplifying through with the order of operations. So I end up with negative 4 here. The 2 and the 4 reduce to give me negative 3/2, because 1 times negative 3 and the 2 on bottom, plus multiply 3/2 plus 1.25. Now probably the easiest way, we have decimals, we have fractions, probably the easiest way is to turn these into decimals as well. So 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. If you need to use your calculator on that, you can. So 3 divided by 2, and plus 1.25. Now I can go ahead and subtract these first two. So negative 4 minus 1.5 is negative 5.5 plus 1.5. Plus 1.25. And I take negative 5.5 plus 1.5, that's going to get me back to a negative 4 plus 1.25. And then I find the difference here, and we have negative 4 plus 1.25 gives me 2.75, and it's negative. So very similar to order of operations, but you do have to plug the numbers in first. All right, let's go ahead and look at the distributive property. So it says simplify each expression. We have a number in front of a parentheses, so this is multiplication, and I'm going to go ahead and take that negative 2 and multiply it in. So negative 2 times m gives me negative 2m. Negative 2 times 1 gives me negative 2. In my second one, I have a negative 1 in front, so I distribute that in. Remember, there's always that 1 there. It's assumed to be there. So negative 1 times m gives me negative m. Negative 1 times negative 4 gives me positive 4. So remember to distribute it into each. Combine like terms. Negative 2m minus m gives me negative 3m. And then we have negative 2 plus 4 gives me positive 2. So that's using the distributive property to simplify. Notice that we're just simplifying here because we're using an expression. There's no equal signs, so we're not solving. Let's go ahead and look at another one where we're working with simplifying. So we just have a few more parts here. A big mistake with these as you start going through is adding like terms at the wrong time. So if we look at this original problem, what I find is this 2 plus 3 out here is inviting, like, okay, I can add those real quick to give me a 5. But what we have to remember is when we have a number pressed up against a parentheses, that means multiplication. So I have to multiply first before I can do any type of combining like terms. So the 2 just comes down to the next step. 3 times 2 is 6z. 3 times negative 5 gives me negative 15. I have a negative 3 times 4 gives me negative 12z. Negative 3 times 6 gives me a negative 18. I'm not going to distribute the negative 3 all the way to the negative 8 because the negative 8 is outside the parentheses, so I'm just going to write negative 8. And then we combine like terms. So I have a 6z and a minus 12z. Those are like terms. So that gives me negative 6z. Then I have a 2 minus 15 gives me a negative 13. Minus 18 gives me a negative 31. Minus 8 gives me a negative 39. So you add 4 to combine there. If you needed to do them one at a time, you could. Just take your time, write as many steps out as you need to. It'll be good when you get to that quiz to have the extra steps. Okay, let's look at the last one for week 1 video. This is in 1.4 as well. And if I move too quick through anything, go ahead and rewind, pause, do whatever you need to do. So with this problem, we want to complete the statement so that the indicated property is used. So we're asked to use the distributive property. So something's already been distributed into this problem. So we look at our problem. We have 5x plus 8x. Okay, so I notice that all of them, both terms, have an x. So I want to figure out how can I rewrite this so that the distributive property is used. So we're finding that they both have an x. So I'm going to take an x and I'm going to put it in front of the parentheses. And I'm going to put my 5 plus 8 in here. So notice that if I took the x and distributed it in, it would end up back to the original. So we're showing how the distributive property would have worked. If we're asked just to combine these, we could add these to get 13x. So illustrating the indicated property just means show how that you got there. So I hope the first week of videos were good. You printed the PDF file of the blank and took some notes. Hopefully you'll find that these are useful. If you do have questions, let us know. Thanks for watching.